What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The success of the Renault Logan showed that French budget sedans can be popular in developing markets, including Russia. PSA could not ignore such a fertile segment, but they prepared for the debut for quite a long time, if not to consider the first attempt as an absurd Peugeot 206 sedan. As a result, a symmetrical answer to Logan appeared only in 2012, then Peugeot 301 was presented, and together with it the twin Citroën C-Elise. These cars are absolutely identical technically, so all of the following fully applies to the model from Citroën. They are built on the same not old PF1 platform, which was launched by Peugeot 206 hatchback in the late 90s and continued by Peugeot 207, Peugeot 207, Citroën C3 Picasso and many other cars, including modern Opel. Sedans had to attract buyers with a decent length of 4.44 meters for the class, spaciousness in the back row due to the wheelbase of 2.65 meters as well as a trunk of 500 liters. Well, and so many design, of course. To Nissan Almera, made from Logan, the French couple did not reach neither by length nor by wheelbase, but the space and volume all the same offered decent. But let's get back to Peugeot. The 301 sedan appeared in Russia quite soon after its launch, in 2013. The 301's trump card compared to the C-Elise was the diesel engine. Citroën also had it, but it was not offered in Russia. The cars were brought to us from Spain, and they did not think much about localization in Kaluga. It had to be justified by sales. But sales did not go well. First, the prices were too high. For the basic 301 they asked for 50,000, but the car in a decent configuration with a motor 1.6 was already 600,000, and the diesel in the top configuration, all 680,000. And secondly, competition in the class was high, and the newcomer failed to take away the audience from the long-standing leaders. As a result, annual sales amounted to a few thousand cars at best. In 2015, prices in the market crept up, and imported 301 began to cost 500 to 800,000. The diesel engine by that time had already been removed from the range, and the number of configurations was reduced. In 2016, the sedan received a restyling in the world, and in our country it finally left the market. By that time there was only to sell out cars in the top configuration at a price under a million rubles without taking into account discounts. In general, the restyled Peugeot is not to be found on the secondary market. And in general, deliveries to Russia actually stopped after 2014, so almost the entire market is formed by cars of 2013 to 2014 year of manufacture. Due to the low popularity of the model, the number of cars on the secondary market is small. At the time of writing the material there were 90 copies for sale on Avito. Is it difficult to find a good variant with such a scarce assortment? If we talk about the condition of the body, it is a bit difficult to find a car in factory paint. On the one hand, there is galvanization, and chips from stones can be painted over. On the other hand, the paintwork is thin and rather fragile, and chips rust quickly. In addition, it is not without peculiarities, and the main signature problems of the Peugeot 301 are corrosion of attachments. Doors rust along the lower edge, swelling under the sealant and upsetting with loose corrosion in the area of the bolting. At the same time, during inspection you can look under seals and examine door aperture for rubbing, taking into account thickness of paint layer. Problems are possible here as well. The hood suffers not only from the outside, but also from the inside. It too should be inspected carefully to assess the quality of a very likely repaint. The same goes for the trunk lid. Both the outer and inner sides and the bottom edge require extra attention. The bumper defender joints may have minor issues, especially if the bumpers have been removed. Of course, the arches and sills should be inspected with vigor. Stones and sandblast easily damage these areas, and not all owners repair and protect them properly. The front edge of the roof is not galvanized, so it is quite possible to meet red spots and even bubbles under the windshield. But all problems at once are still rare, and owners usually know about the weak points and try to eliminate defects in time. So you cannot be afraid of repainted elements. It is better than fighting rust yourself. One might assume that due to the relatively small popularity of the model, body parts for it will be exclusively original and expensive. However, there are two good news: both assumptions are wrong. First, there are third-party options for most popular parts, and second, even the original is often quite affordable. Yes, there are typically difficult positions like the hood, you can't find analogues for it, and the original costs $30,000 to $35,000. Which is inexpensive by the standards of the original, but expensive by the standards of the model. But the original front fender can be bought for only $9,000 to $12,000, and substitutes are offered for $5,000 to $10,000. The front bumper is also not so expensive, $15,000 to $20,000 for the original and $5,000 to $15,000 for analogues. Even the windshield with Peugeot marking can be found for $10,000 to $12,000, and alternatives will cost $6,000 to $8,000. Halogen headlights also surprise with the price. The original is available for $15,000 to $20,000, and substitutes are available in the range from $6,000 to $25,000. Rear lights, by the way, are even cheaper. The branded ones are realistic to buy for $7,000. Against the background of some other rare budget foreign cars, body iron for which you have to buy either under the order or for expensive, Peugeot 301 is almost a model for imitation. However, it should be taken into account that it is almost useless to look for parts for it on foreign dismantling sites. In Western Europe the model was simply not sold. In Eastern Europe it is also not very popular, and its other target markets like China, Turkey, and Latin America are too far away. And even in Russia, if you could still be afraid of something with the body, the chassis is predictably simple and cheap. The popular platform and unification do their business, and suspension schemes here are as simple as possible: McPherson in front and a beam at the rear. The front L-shaped lever, for example, is suitable for a lot of other models, including hatchbacks 207 and 208, and costs only $5,000 to $7,000 for the original, and non-original assembly with a ball bearing on rivets is offered in a wide range of prices from $3,000 to $12,000. Ball, of course, you can buy a separate repair ball. In the Peugeot package it will cost $1,500 to $2,000, which is inexpensive. And in another, from 600 rubles, which is even cheaper. Silent blocks of the lever are also available separately and are inexpensive. The front hub bearing is changed separately from the hub and costs $5,000 to $6,000 for the original and $1,000 to $7,000 for analogues. The original stabilizer bar will cost only 1,000 rubles, but you can save twice on it if you want. The front shock absorber costs about 6,000 for a firm and from 3,000 to 10,000 for an alternative variant, which is offered many places. At the rear, the wear elements are even less. The hub bearing will require 4,000 to 5,000 rubles in the original version and from 1,500 in the non-original. Shock absorbers here are cheaper than in front, 3,000 to 4,000 for the original and 2,000 to 8,000 for analogues. Well and silent blocks of a back beam are also inexpensive. The firm one is available for $1,500 and substitutes for the same money it is possible to buy a pair. There should be no difficulties with repair here, so the suspension can be replaced by a pair of substitutes for the same money. With brakes everything is also primitive, in some places even too much. At the front they are single-piston disc mechanisms with a floating bracket and discs with a diameter of 266 mm and drums at the back. But the most basic versions didn't even have ABS, and the front discs are unventilated. Fortunately, we had ABS as standard equipment. Maintenance of brakes is absolutely not ruinous, except that prices of brake discs are traditionally high. If the front ventilated disc is General Corporate, from all small Peugeot and Citroën, and costs 10,000 for the original and from 2,000 for analogues, the original drum is already 15,000, and even analogues cost from 4 to the same 15,000. A set of decent pads will cost another couple of thousand both in front and behind. Handbrake here is the simplest, with a cable drive, so you just need to check its work, condition of lines and hoses, as well as discs. And pads to bargain if necessary. The steering is a little bit complicated. The thing is that instead of the old design with GUR, there is a more budget electric power steering mounted on a rack. There are practically no non-original and restored LADs in an assembly, and the new original costs as a quarter of the car, 140 to 180,000 rubles. So, in case of malfunction of the motor, it will have to be fixed or searched for on the dismantling. Therefore, when inspecting the car, its work should be paid close attention to. The steering wheel should not stutter and jerk, and the force should be stable and homogeneous. The choice of gearboxes depended on the engine and came down to two options, manual and automatic. Manual 5-speed boxes of MA5 and BE4 are series of proven units which were put on larger and heavier models, such as 307 and 407. They have no specific shortcomings and age problems, provided that the oil is changed at least once every 50 to 60,000 kilometers. Appear by the mileage of 250 to 300,000. These are typical malfunctions like wear of bearings of shafts, synchronizers, and also mechanism of switching. It, by the way, can give up earlier than 250,000. Automatic gearbox 88 is not an 8-stage automatic, as it would be desirable to assume, and well familiar to us 4-stage AL4. Everything is known about it for a long time. It is not fast and not very reliable at the standard maintenance schedule, but it considerably increases in resource if to install an external radiator and filter, and to change oil every 40 to 50,000 kilometers. In such favorable conditions, it may well serve 200 to 250,000 kilometers. In addition, it has long been familiar to all masters of automatic transmission repair and is relatively cheap to rebuild. In general, if on larger and more expensive models it can be queried, it fits into the concept of Peugeot 301 flawlessly. 3 motors were assigned to the sedan, and all of them were available in Russia. The base variant is a 3-cylinder atmospheric EB2 with 1.2 liters and 72 horsepower. This is a relatively modern unit. The EB family appeared in 2012 and in the version with turbocharging, direct injection and phase controllers is put on current models of the Stellantis concern. On 301 is presented the simplest variation of it, without changing the phases of gas distribution, without supercharging and with conventional distributed injection. True, even in this case it does not become perfect. One of the most unfortunate solutions is a timing belt working in an oil bath. Its resource is small, sometimes only 40 to 50,000 kilometers, during which it begins to deteriorate and clogs the oil with wear products, clogging the oil receiver and wearing out the oil pump. The condition of the belt can be assessed through the oil filler, and any cracks or delaminations are a reason for immediate replacement. Besides, sometimes there were problems with destruction of the catalytic converter, dust from which led to scoring in cylinders and progressive oil appetite. In general, the Motor 1, 2 may be more decent than representatives of the family prints, but it's not the best one to buy. But the 1.6-liter 4-cylinder TU5 motor with 115 horsepower, you name it. On 301 and CA-Lise it could be called EC5, but in essence it is the same old French engine with cast iron block, belt timing and distributed injection. In the EC5 version it was complicated by a phase regulator on the intake shaft, which may require 18 to 20,000 rubles for replacement. But otherwise the motor remained as simple and very reliable. It is worth monitoring the cleanliness of the cooling system and the work of the crankcase ventilation system, as well as the absence of leaks and the state of the catalytic converters, but these are elementary and typical tasks. With good care, this motor can go 250 to 300 and more thousand kilometers before the beginning of noticeable oil consumption due to lodged rings or worn valve guides. This, however, can also be considered a small problem, which is solved relatively cheaply. The third option was a 4-cylinder turbo diesel with 1.6 liters and 92 horsepower. It has an indexed DV60 TED, has 2 valves per cylinder and belt drive timing, but has no particulate filter and even less urea injection. In general, according to the description, almost ideal in simplicity and reliability of the diesel motor, and in practice it quite justifies these conjectures. Piston resource is stable, timing is reliable, and potential failures are usual for diesel, supercharging, fuel equipment and EGR clogging the inlet with soot. So diesel enthusiasts can be very happy. The only nuance is that the diesel is combined only with the maximum configuration, but only with a manual gearbox. The automatic was available only for the 1.6-liter gasoline motor. Now it becomes clear that despite its unpopularity, Peugeot 301 was a very good option of a simple car for many years. Old platform, old motor, old suspensions, all this makes the sedan a budget car exactly in the best sense of the word, that is, cheap and reliable. And given that they have not yet passed the age of 10 years, there is a chance to find a copy with a decent residual resource. The simplest and most logical option will be a car with a 1.6-litre gasoline motor. For $500,000 or a little more, you can look for a well-groomed sedan with a small number of owners and mileage up to 150,000 kilometers, for example, like this one. If Autoteca confirms accident-free history and honesty of odometer readings, then you will have a minimum of reasons to go into the coffers for expensive repairs. Well, if you like diesels and you manage to find a car that did not work for a legal entity or in a cab, it can also be a great companion for several years. However, 301 with such engine are sold only piece by piece, but there are chances for success. True, and they asked for well-maintained diesel copies even more than for gasoline ones. Here, for example, is one of them. In conclusion, the Peugeot 301 presents a compelling option for those seeking a budget-friendly vehicle without compromising on essential features and comfort. Priced at 500,000 rubles, it offers a blend of practicality, efficiency, and a decent driving experience. While it may not be the most exciting choice in its class, its reliability and value for money make it a worthy contender for budget-conscious buyers. Ultimately, if you prioritize affordability and functionality, the Peugeot 301 could be a smart investment for your needs.